Hello and good morning. Welcome to episode 8 of the Drivers Debrief. I'm your host, Nicholas Patty. Welcome to my small, quiet corner of the internet. We have a lot to talk about. We've kind of redone some segments. We've added some segments and we've taken some segments away. But we also have a little bit of a story time. Little story hour. We got to do some really cool things over the weekend. It was not going to the Formula One race, but we have a lot on the agenda. But before I jump into that head first with both feet, let's go ahead and see what we're going to be talking about. We got some cars that we're going to talk. Well, okay. First, we have cars that we're going to talk about. So this is new. This is what we're adding to. This is what we're adding to the podcast. I used to do this on a previous podcast with a friend of mine back when we ran that. But we're gonna kind of break apart some of the cars, break down some of the cars, talk through things we've seen in the automotive world, and more. So we're gonna I guess we're gonna start with that. I was thinking about potentially just ending with that, but we're gonna start with that, and then we're gonna jump into the racing that we have from this weekend. And so rather than having a conversation corner be our little name for the segment when we go through and discuss news and everything, we now have our car segment and we have the cool down room. So that's going to be our kind of new racing news section of the podcast will be the cool down room. So with that said and no further ado, let's go ahead and get into our news. So as you may have seen, Ferrari came out with a new car. This is a rough episode. I forgot. Let's go through where you can follow. Feel free to follow on X at Drivers Debrief. If you're watching the episode, you're already here. You're watching it as we speak. So thank you for that. But you can watch here at Drivers Debrief, or you can watch on playback at Drivers Debrief on YouTube, on Rumble at Drivers Debrief. So that's where you're going to want to be to watch these when they're uploaded after the fact, when we're not live here on X. All right. So now let's move into the cars. So Ferrari has come out with a new Halo car as a response to the McLaren W1. And Ferrari's car is the next in line. The next car in succession to the throne that the F40, F50, Enzo, and LaFerrari built. So the F80 is a 1,200 horsepower twin-turbo V6 hybrid. 0 to 124 miles an hour in 5.8 seconds, over 1,000 kilograms of peak downforce. And some cool things about it. It has some retro seats. One thing that was a staple on the Ferraris of yesteryear was the red seats. The red, I don't know if they were suede or they were non-leather red fabric seats in the F40, F50 to conjure up kind of that racy feel. And so Ferrari's brought that back for the F80. But it makes you wonder, who are we missing, right? Who are we missing from the party? We're used to, in these conversations, you have the big three. You have Porsche, Ferrari, and McLaren. Well, we've gotten McLaren and Ferrari's submissions for the king of the hypercar. But we have not gotten the Porsche. So let's go through some of the main comparisons between the Ferrari and the McLaren. Both have active aero. Both generate over 1,000 kilograms of downforce. Both are in and around 1,200 horsepower. The main difference is the McLaren is a V8 based powertrain and the Ferrari is a V6. It's been mixed reviews on that. Fair, and it's a fair critique, but a lot of people have been saying if you're going to buy this Ferrari, if you're going to buy the top of the line Halo car Ferrari, it shouldn't have a V6. Even if Ferrari can make the power on a V6, just for the cachet that Ferrari holds when it comes to these types of cars, that shouldn't be a V6. Let me know what you think in the comments. moving on to another new car, and it is from Porsche, but it's not the one we want. The brand new Porsche 911 GT3. It's the 2025 911 GT3. So for our Porsche fanatics, it's 992.2. So I guess it's kind of crazy to think the 992 still feels really new. But the 993, 994, whatever they end up calling the next generation is next. So it's a 25th anniversary of the GT3. Obviously, the original GT3 came out in 1999 with the 996, but that was in Europe. Here in the US, it came over later. And they showed off the standard GT3, so the non-RS, and the GT3 Touring. It's still the 4-liter flat six, making 510 horsepower. It retains the 6-speed manual option. And it was cool recently in an interview, one of the heads of Porsche in their development came out and said that the US market was the market that had the biggest backlash and the biggest drop in sales of manual Porsche GT3s that made Porsche bring back the manual. And this was in 991.2, 991, one of the 991 generations. They scrapped it for a period. There was such backlash that Porsche brought it back. So kudos to us in the US. The Weissach package is now available, though, for the standard GT3 as opposed to just RS models. So the Weissach package you could get, and you can still, on the GT4 RS, GT3 RS, GT2 RS. Now you can just get it on the GT3. I would wager that means we're also going to get this on just the GT4, on the new Cayman GT4, whenever that comes out. I have a feeling that you're going to be able to get the Weissach package just on that. Some of the biggest differences between this and the previous generation GT3 is that it has 8% shorter gear ratios, which obviously for racing is better. You don't want the extremely long gears if you're never going to use the benefit of that gearing. The shorter ratios are better for in between corners and everything, acceleration. It is lighter than the 992.1 GT3, thanks to several options that you can get in magnesium, like the GT3 RS magnesium wheels. It has newer, lighter bucket seats that are thinner than the GT3s and the GT3 RSs, and to 0 to 60 in 3.4 seconds. And the top speed is just a smidgen over 200 miles an hour. So this car, obviously, totally different league than the F80. But I will say, cosmetically, look at how the car looks. This new GT3, it gives me 996 vibes because it's fairly round, fairly, not androgynous isn't the right word. Fairly, it doesn't look particularly aggressive, right? It looks like the car that it's based off of. So it looks similar enough to what a standard 911 looks like, plus a little wang on the back. But then it's the weight reduction, it's the stiffening, it's the 6-speed. It has all the right ingredients that aren't immediately obvious from the outside, right? So when you see a GT3 RS, you're like, oh my God, okay, look at that wing, look at all the louvers, look at the airflow up out of the hood, look at that, like, wow, you can just tell you can see the performance just from looking at it. I feel like this GT3 looks less racy and over-engineered than the 992.1 GT3. Again, we're talking non-RSs. It just looks rounder, smoother, more body color, less plastic aero bits, and I'm a big fan. I really, 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 really like this GT3, like a lot. And I think it's, of all of them, this would be the one that I would want to get, except for the fact that it loses the physical tack. So say goodbye to your actual gauge with an actual needle. It's all digital. And I might be just not remembering correctly, but I believe the 992.1 was still a physical tack, and then the rest of it was digital. So that would be the only thing that's, ooh. We have a new car called the RML P39 40th Edition, and I think y'all need to look this up. I would do a photo here, but this is live, and I'm not good at editing even after the fact. So you're just going to have to deal with it. But it's a 992 Turbo S based car. And they basically rebodied it and wide-bodied it. So re and wide. It looks like a small, round GT1 car. It looks like the 993 GT1 that's been shortened and narrowed just a wee bit to a standard turbo width. It looks smoking hot, but it's not just a pretty mistress. It's got 1 ton of downforce and over 900 horsepower. And if they manage to lighten this thing at all, what's ironic is this thing is short by 250 horsepower on the F80 and the W1. But in terms of downforce, you're about there. Yeah, I don't know. Could be, it's not actually a competitor. It's just, it would be funny that this random company could take, and I say random, I've never heard of them, but they could take this car and kind of be sort of near that conversation. Mustang GTD news, it's not a new car, but they are actively doing the Nürburgring lap time testing. They're attempting to be the first American car to lap the Nürburgring in under 7 minutes. And Jim Farley himself has come out and said he wants nothing more than to just thrash the Europeans at the Nordschleife. So this, ladies and gentlemen, brings me to something that I've been asking since I saw the new GT3 RS, and then subsequently since I saw the GTD Mustang, which is, I just realized this is the light that's way too bright. Sorry. That's sort of better. We're going to do this all live. Y'all are just going to ride with me up for this one. And since I saw the Mustang GTD, which is for the kind of $250,000 to $350,000 ultimate road legal track toy, but before you get to hypercar, what car is going to be the king? So let's build this out on a spectrum. As I ask this, comment in this X live stream, or if you're watching this back on YouTube and Rumble, I want your opinions. There is no right answer. Which car do you think is going to be the best, and also why? What factor makes you lean one way or the other? So, who's going to be the king? The GT3 RS 992.1, the Mustang GTD, or the Corvette ZR1? So, some brief context: the C7 Corvette never set, the ZR1 never set an official Nürburgring lap time. So we don't even know what the previous generation Corvette did as kind of a baseline, a benchmark. So the Porsche generates the most downforce, makes the least power, makes 510 horsepower. The Mustang makes more horsepower, less downforce than the Porsche. So it's kind of just right. The Corvette makes the most horsepower, but the least downforce. So you have this continuum where it's like, okay, I make the least amount of horsepower, but man, I have the most downforce through high-speed corners, all that sort of stuff. And then the Mustang's like, yeah, I don't make as much downforce as you, but I'm going to make it up with horsepower. And then the Corvette's just like, I make oodles horsepower. Not a lot of way to put it down on the road, though. Who do you think is going to set the fastest time? Because the Nürburgring, while it has significant portions of it that are straight line runs, there's so much of it that are high-speed corners that I don't, in the kind of middle third of the track, I mean, it's essentially a straight, but with these really high-speed corners that I'm assuming the ZR1 could go through flat, but also with 1,000 horsepower, you could be doing speeds that we're not anticipating going up to those corners where you have to lift or brake, and then the Porsche can stay flat. The Mustang more than likely can stay flat. I think it's going to be very, very interesting. I want to put my money on the Porsche, but to a friend of mine's point, when the Corvette's making double the horsepower, I don't know if there's any amount of downforce that can save you. Like, I don't know. But that's why I want to hear your comments. So comment below on the video or in this live stream, and we will answer those. So that was our coverage of the cars, ladies and gentlemen. We are moving into something a little different. Well, we're moving into something a little familiar from the different. We're moving into the driver's cool down room. Yes, indeed. We're going to chat about all the racing that we have coming up and all the racing news. So let's jump into it. First off, NASCAR is pushing back on the Front Row Motorsports in 2311 lawsuit and is starting the process of removing charters. Kelvin van der Linde's contract is about to expire with ABT, and he's seeking an LMDH test with Iron Lynx Lamborghini. For those of you who don't know, Kelvin van der Linde, GT3 racing ace, but he's been with Audi for years, and now that his contract is expiring, he wants to find a way to do an LMDH test. Having won the GTP title at IMSA, Penske Porsche is fielding 3 factory entries into 2025 Le Mans. French young drivers Theo Pourchaire, however you pronounce it, and Clement Novalak will test the Peugeot 9x8 at the Bahrain rookie test for WEC. WEC LMGT3 is ditching the orange number panels, and they're moving to Pantone green. The important news is what we bring you here. Ben Keating is reviewing where he will spend his time and effort next season, as he doesn't feel like his current drives make a difference in LMP2, so he wants to find a class where he feels that he can make a difference in his stints. Meguiar's is becoming the title sponsor of the Bathurst 12 Hour. That's the GT3 race, not the Bathurst 1000 that's V8 Supercars. Hailie Deegan is moving from pursuing her stock car aspirations, and she will race next year in Indy Next. She did some Indy Next testing. And this brings me to one of our little cool down room conversation points, which is Hailie Deegan had, let's just say, marginal success in Xfinity. How do we feel she will do in Indy Next? Because Indy Next is a dramatically more difficult car to drive compared to an Xfinity car. But you're also going up against a field that I would argue is a more tough field. Not because Xfinity isn't tough, but because you have Indy Next drivers that have spent their whole lives in go-karting, open wheel ladder. Xfinity, you have guys from Outlaw Modified, whatever all the dirt track, it's oval racing, but it's fairly different. Obviously, it all builds up car control and ability, but in terms of directly correlating and reflecting the car you're going to be racing in, Indy Next has a lot more drivers coming up than Xfinity does in cars that are a lot more identical to the car they're actually driving. So we'll get to it, but Dennis Hogger, who's a F2 driver, Red Bull Academy driver, is racing in Indy Next year with Andretti. So you have a Red Bull Academy driver, and then you have Hailie Deegan. Who do we think is going to come out on top in that one? All right, and I'm not a Hailie Deegan slanderer, but I am just saying I don't see it going well. Santino Ferrucci comes out, and he claims that the Arlington GP in 2026 is really the first F1 style street race, and he believes it'll become a staple on the calendar. God, I hope so. Fabio Di Gianantonio will miss the final 2 races of the MotoGP season as he undergoes surgery. So I wrote this update before Phillip Island, but then he raced at Phillip Island. So I don't even know if that's valid anymore, but he wasn't supposed to be racing. Max Verstappen says Piastri is too good to be a number 2 driver, and he shouldn't yield to Lando's career aspirations. I kind of agree with this, but not necessarily because Piastri is too good. I just agree with this because I don't think teams can realistically expect drivers to be number 2 when every single person in F1 dreams of being a world champion one day. People like Zhou Guanyu may have given up on that dream. But people like Piastri, even Lance Stroll, like they all want to be world champion. Considering that they're actually in a car that's potentially a world championship winning car, I don't think Piastri should yield. I think if Piastri wants points, he should be able to get points. It's called being a racing driver. 2025 onwards, F1 will no longer award a point for a fastest lap. Teams must now offer rookies 4 FP1 sessions throughout the year, doubled from the previous standard of 2. That's an F1 as well. Formula EU organizers are struggling to find a 17th race to fill a 2-month gap on the schedule, which leads me to another kind of conversation point. What does this mean for Formula E? Granted, they already have 17, or they have 16 races on the calendar. They can't find a 17th. Does that make anybody nervous for Formula E, or is that, hey, we have a healthy 16 races on the calendar, let's just let sleeping dogs lie? I don't know. We just covered Dennis Hogger. Nitro Cross, the off-road rallycross series founded by Travis Pastrana, has canceled the last 3 races of their season, leading to teams being kind of not in an uproar, but upset, frustrated, disappointed even. So, yeah, unfortunately, I mean, it's a really cool series. The cars are cool. The competitors are cool. Leo Block's done some stuff in there. Travis Pastrana races there. But unfortunately, the series doesn't have the legs on it, at least this season, to maintain the basically the costs are too high, the operational costs for the series, to make it worth doing these next 3 races with how many people they anticipate coming out to them, which is unfortunate because it's a cool event. Toyota Racing, which is the North American division of Toyota Racing, is being renamed Toyota Gazoo Racing North America for 2025 and onward. So that's a NASCAR, WEC, everything. Sebastian Bourdais is joining the Chip Ganassi Racing Cadillac number 2 car for the WEC finale. So that's the blue number 2 Cadillac we've come to love in WEC. The hypercar regulations have been extended to 2029 by the ACO, which leads me to another little conversation point in this episode. So please comment or just chat in this live stream. I have it pulled up. Who do we think is also going to join? Obviously, Aston Martin's working on a program with Heart of Racing. We know Genesis, the Hyundai brand, is working on joining. Van Wall has been improving the reliability of their car, and they're trying to make a bid to re-enter. We lost Isotta Francini already, but are there other brands we think are going to get involved in this? You could argue Maserati might get involved. I think it was rumored that who was it? There was another European brand that I thought was rumored to be getting in or considering it. But who do we think is going to get in? There could always be like a Pagani entry. I think that'd be sick because the car is not really far off. You just have to strip it out, make it meet regulations, and then it would have balance of performance hit it. But who else do we think? Maserati, Pagani, other manufacturers. Let me know who you think is going to potentially join, or not just think, but who would be cool. Felipe Albuquerque has announced that he's parting ways with Honda Racing after a few years stint. The Toyota GR Corolla is making its touring car debut in SRO America 2025, which, guys, this thing is pimping. It is so cool. It is. I'm excited. TC class has been growing. We got the Seat Cupra. We now have the Toyota GR Corolla. So the touring car class in SRO and IMSA is healthy. And then I added this one this morning. This is breaking as of this morning. DTM is undergoing a significant rebrand, logo changes, and plans. Chat, check this out. And plans to run on synthetic fuel, which is awesome. Thank you, Porsche. But it will be a good test for synthetic fuel. If DTM runs on synthetic fuels, this could be paving the way for F1 to run V10s again on synthetic fuel. This could be paving the way for NASCAR to run on synthetic fuel. And then we wouldn't have to worry about hybrids or battery powered. This could be IndyCar, right? They're moving to hybrid, but this could be synthetic as well. So DTM is going to be doing the Lord's work over here by running the synthetic fuel, and I am here for it. Moving into... Okay. Take a deep breath. That was a lot. 23 minutes in. Thank you for the people coming by this episode 8 of the Drivers Debrief. We're not done. No. Don't go anywhere. That was just our car segment. That was covering the cooldown room. But now we have some racing to get into. But before I do, not social plugs, I have a story. So, how the hell? There we go. Over here. See it? Ooh, there it is. Everything's inverted. We have a cool story to tell. So this is the second year in my entire life in the history of F1 at COTA that I have not gone. I've been there 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Well, I wasn't there for when they did the COVID race. And then 21, 22, I wasn't there 23, wasn't there 24, wasn't there in 23, tickets were too expensive. Not there this year because I have a newborn, a little baby boy. So my wife and I didn't go. And, it kind of sucks. You sit there, you miss not being at the track, you feel like you're missing out because, kind of having this streak, this run of going to all these races. But Aston Martin tweeted Saturday morning that they had walk-in spaces available for their rooftop skybox bar cocktail party with the team. And so I, like any good Fernando stan, decided that I was going to change. I was going to leave my wife and newborn at home. Don't worry, I got their permission. And drive an hour and a half to downtown Austin to go be a part of this. So I hopped in my Camaro. I hauled tail down to downtown Austin, walked in, got a free hat. And let me tell you, it was an experience. So I just have a few stories. I posted photos from this all day, all night Aston Martin party on my X. So if you want to see photos, if you want to see some videos, check it out at Drivers Debrief on X. If you're watching this live, you know where to find me. But so let's just run through a quick thing. We got a hat. We got free cocktails and free food, including Shiner Bock's not a cocktail, but beer cocktails, Shiner Bock, slow smoked ribs, seared snapper fish. We had brisket. It was a great time. Jack and Coke. It was everything you could want was to be had at the Aston Martin party. But beyond that, we had a Zoom call with Stoffel Van Dorn doing some tech talk, Q&A. Jessica Hawkins made an appearance. She's the GT3 Aston Martin and F1 reserve driver. And then we had a sim set up there. They were doing F1 24 sim racing. Went undefeated in all my 5 races, just saying. And then I ran into some people from Houston who were big Fernando fans, OG fans, not these Drive to Survive yahoos. And so we started chatting, and then me and them got pulled backstage to do promotional content for the team to celebrate Fernando's 400th race coming up this next weekend. Also, it just made me remember that they're coming out with merchandise that's literally dropping today that I got to see and wear without it being released to the public. And she told me it's being released today. So I gotta find this stuff and order it while we're on the cast. But we had a great time. It was a super cool event. We went behind the scenes, got some promotional content, got to send a message to Fernando. We got to record this video that Fernando's going to see. And that was really cool. That was probably the most special part of it, was knowing that I got to leave a message for Fernando that he would see and he would interact with. He would, presumably they're going to record his reaction. So if and when I see that content live on social media, I'll make sure to share it on my X. But we stayed for a while. There was a Q&A with Jessica. There was a meet and greet with her. So she's the one that signed this hat and shared her plans to go run Le Mans with Aston Martin at some point, which is super cool. They had the 2022 Aston Martin up on the Skybox rooftop bar. Getting to walk around that car, see that car was really cool after having Williams come out to my work with Franco Colapinto and his Williams car. So it's been kind of a bizarre last 2 weeks when it comes to F1 and interaction, but it really made the whole event special, the whole weekend special, knowing that I wasn't going to get to go to the race. Really, really cool event. And I know I keep saying cool. It was really important, cool in a kind of an emotional way, being a Fernando fan since I was, go-karting at 4 and 5 years old. Being able to be that close to everybody, interact with the team, share those memories, share those sentiments with the team and Fernando. There were corporate, it's not just hired contractor people. There were Aston Martin folks from the UK working the event who travel with them all year round. So it was cool to kind of make those connections, meet those people, and get to know their name and everything. So that's my little anecdote story. Check out those photos on X. Let's jump into the United States Grand Prix. So let's just go through the results first, and then we're going to get into all the, stuff. DNF, Lewis Hamilton. First time he is DNF'd out of a U.S. Grand Prix. Guan Yu Zhou, 19th. Esteban Ocon in 18th. Valtteri in 17th. Albon, 16th. Stroll, 15th. Tsunoda, 14th. Fernando in 13th, Pierre in 12th, Kevin Magnussen in 11th, Franco Colapinto in 10th, scoring points. Liam Lawson in 9th, also scoring points. Nico Hulkenberg in 8th, Sergio Perez 7th, George Russell 6th, Oscar Piastri in 5th, Lando Norris 4th, Max Verstappen 3rd. We're going to get to that drama. Carlos Sainz 2nd, and Charles Leclerc 1st. So Ferrari's first 1-2 finish since the U.S. in 2006 with Michael Schumacher and Felipe Massa, if you can believe that. That's how long it's been since Ferrari has had a 1-2 in the United States, which is insane. Like, that's bizarre that it's been 18 years since Ferrari, especially with competitive cars, especially with them having race-winning cars. Not a 1-2. Not a 1 since 2006. Okay, so those are the results. Let's just go ahead and get into the drama. So I've been kind of battling, not really battling, but just been talking with people on X to the point where we're up to several hundred likes on a single tweet. So Max Verstappen only got his 3rd place from overtaking Norris due to a penalty on Norris. So here's the drama. Norris catches up to Max. Norris, after a few laps, gets DRS, goes around. So we're going into turn 12. Everybody's seen the clip, right? Into turn 12. He's ahead on the outside. Max, super late brakes up the inside, is ahead at the apex. They both run off with Lando being on the outside. Lando maintains momentum. Theoretically, overtakes Max again because he was behind him and then again in front of him because he was off the track into turn 13. So there are, for the people watching this, there are elements to this, okay? I will go through this as slowly and as clearly as I can. Do not comment. I know you're typing already. Stop. Do not comment until you've heard the full remarks, because I'm dealing with enough Twitter warriors right now. I do not need a not thought out, half-hearted answer. Did Lando leave the track and gain an advantage? Yes. Several things can be true at once, okay? Technically, Max was ahead at the apex, meaning that it was his corner. Lando was not ahead, but then Lando was ahead in turn 13 as he was off the track. Okay, so that is true. What is also true is that Max was never going to make the corner, dive bombed up the inside, and forced Lando off the track. Can we agree that both of those things are true? I'm not saying someone is right or someone is not. We're speaking in, okay, we're just talking about the facts. Lando, behind at the apex, went off track, coming out of the corner, overtook Max. Max, going into the corner, dive bombed, was never going to make the corner, and ran wide. Ran off the track. Okay, those two things can be true at once. So everybody's torn up about this right now because Lando got a penalty and Max didn't, and it ruined Lando's race. So, I guess before I move on, let me wrap up the problems I have with this. I don't really give a shit about the penalty. Excuse my French. I also don't really care about the whole Max was ahead, Lando ran off track, and I don't care. Can we go back to what every other form of racing in the entire world is? And it's a much simpler rule. So, I'm getting ahead of myself. Not context. Let's build this argument from the ground up. Even if you have the best officiating in the world, simpler regulations lead to less misinterpretation and less inconsistency in application. Can we agree on that? If rules are complicated, that makes several things happen. One, it's more confusing for the fans when we're in Twitter threads, X threads, arguing about who should have beat who and who won this and who was ahead at the apex versus track out versus forcing another driver off the track versus gaining an advantage off the... It makes it much more complicated. And additionally, it opens up the opportunity for stewards who are on a rotating basis, race by race, or couple races by couple races, to interpret them differently or enforce them differently due to them seeing it different ways. Now, there's always going to be human error. But if you make a set of regulations that are incredibly simple, you eliminate the opportunity for things to go absolutely sideways fast. So let's take a step back. How I think the rules should... Who cares about who's in front of who at an apex? Really? Or from the apex? I had somebody correct me. I said at, and they were like, well, the rules say from. If we're arguing over at versus from to determine how a penalty is distributed, ruining what was decided on track or off track by the racers, are we actually watching racing at that point? This is just, I'm going to flat out say it. This is why IMSA, WEC, SRO, NASCAR, this is why every motorsport has better racing than Formula One. It's because there's not this red tape bureaucratic bull that we have to wade through to figure out who wins, who's where, who's what. Well, it's not bureaucratic bullshit. Max forced him off the track. He just, it's not, okay, whatever. The rule should be this. In a battle with another car, if there is overlap between the two cars, which that, you can't misinterpret that, if there's overlap. So, obviously they're not facing each other. No overlap, no overlap, no overlap, no overlap, no overlap, no overlap. Oh, overlap. That's overlap. You have to leave enough room for the car to maintain being on the track, or just leave room for two cars, right? In every other racing series, you can basically do whatever you want at any point on track, as long as one, you're not blocking, and two, you don't forcibly run someone off the track. This whole idea of, oh, well, they have the right to the corner. Well, okay, sure, you have the right to the racing line, but if there's another car up alongside you, there is no, you can't, well, I had the right to the corner, so I ran them clean off the track. That's not a rule anywhere, actually. Not a rule anywhere. And in fact, in WEC, the car on the outside, if they start getting run off the track, they'll make contact. They'll rub. They'll lean on each other, and there's no penalties because it's trying to jockey for the space on the track. But the drivers in sports car racing, they'll here's what you're... I can already hear the comments on these videos. Let's say you're Max. Let's go to this Max and Lando situation. So under my idea of how the rules should function, Max would receive a penalty because he forcibly ran another driver off the track. That's it. It's not about who's ahead of who gained an advantage. It's this whole situation started by Max forcing another driver off the track. Before we ever get to gaining an advantage, you have the initial problem at the corner, which is Max ran someone all the way off the track. It's that simple. Penalty. What Max could have done is, rather than releasing off the brake, because here's what the regulations encourage, and Jensen Button made this point. Max was in the braking zone, knew he wasn't going to be ahead at the corner, which means he doesn't have a right to the corner, so he rolled off the brake to get to the apex first, knowing he was going to go wide, but because the regulations state that he was in front from the apex or at the apex, that it was then his right to the corner. So this trying to be over specific with the rules allows for this stupid gamesmanship on track. Under my proposed, and by my proposed I mean the rules everywhere else in the world, Max could be let's say they're going into the corner. This is Max on the inside, right? So Lando is closing off at the apex. Lando would have to leave room for Max, otherwise they would run into each other. Max wouldn't feel the need to run way deep and wide to get ahead. He could just hold the inside through the corner without rolling off the brake, without pushing them both off the track. And you know what would have happened? Lando would have been not wide in the sense that he runs wide. He would have been on the outside. Max would have been on the inside. They would have come through the corner, both with mildly compromised lines, next to each other. And then Max is on the outside for the next corner. Lando's on the inside. And then they can race through the whole stadium section. But instead, because of how the rules are written, granted, guys, I get Max didn't have to, right? Nobody forced Max to make this aggressive of a move, to abuse or attack the corners due to the rule set like Max did. I get that. But my broader point is if you want to eliminate drivers feeling motivated to do that, you have to get rid of the stupid rules that protect that. Even if you don't think that's how the rules should have been enforced, they clearly are being enforced that way. We have to get a different rule set. We have to. It has to change. Now, that being said about that incident, I do think Lando should have gotten a penalty. But it's for a totally different incident on a different lap. Going into turn one, either the same lap or the subsequent lap, on camera, on the broadcast, Lando coming down the front straight. Sorry, I just banged the table that my camera's on. Lando coming down the front straight is hard staring into his mirror. You can see his helmet all the way turned, locked into his mirror, watching. And it's not like he glances back. He's only looking at his mirror. Go back and watch it if you don't believe me. He's only looking at his mirror. Max cuts to the inside, and as soon as he does that, Max cuts, Lando's still watching, Lando cuts across and blocks. The rules, whether you agree with them or disagree with them, as they sit, say two things. One, you cannot move under braking. It's not a lot of room for interpretation there. Lando moved under braking. Secondly, you cannot make a move in reaction to. So the rules as it's spread out for F1 is that if you're going into a corner, you can cut to the inside, knowing that the driver behind might have wanted to go to the inside, but you have to do it before the attacking driver makes a move. So you want to do this by contrast? On the back straight, right before we got into our drama at the corner. Max, coming down the back straight, moves to center track before Lando makes a move. Lando then moves to the outside, seeing Max's defensive position before we get to the drama. Turn one, Lando, and you can tell it's intentional too because he's staring in the mirror the whole time. It's not like he's driving into the corner, checks his mirror, okay, he's not. I'm going to make a defensive move, and then Max will make his move. So you're not allowed to make a move in reaction to. Here's how you tell whether or not it's in reaction to. Max moved, instantly Lando moved to cover it off. That's in reaction to. That, under the rules, is an automatic penalty, and then beyond that, you're not allowed to move under braking. And he did both. So what I don't understand is give Max the penalty for turn 12. I'll stand by that. Give Max a penalty for forcing another driver off the track turn 12. I think Lando should have gotten 1 10-second or 2 5-seconds for his stuff into turn 1. Like, sit here with me and think about this. If Max gets a penalty in 12 and Lando gets penalties in 1 for, in my opinion, bad moves respectively on both parts, do you not think the general reception of this whole race online would have been more positive? Wow, Max got a penalty and Lando got a penalty. And they're enforcing all the rules on both of them. Wow. Hey, guys, look. It's proper officiating. So, ironically, I sit here with the result of the race and I actually feel like the result was fair. I feel like Max getting the third was fair. But it's not for the penalty that actually got handed out on Lando. I think Max should have gotten a 5 penalty for 12, and Lando should have gotten 2 5s or a singular 10 for his stuff in 1. which net would have set us with Lando having a net 5-second penalty over Max. Max still would have finished third. I don't know. I know that's a controversial take, I'm sure. I'm sure there's people that don't feel like turn 1 should have been a penalty or are saying, you're taking the FIA or Max's side because I think Lando should have gotten a penalty. I'm not. I do think Max should have gotten a penalty for turn 12, but that's overshadowed for me by the penalty that should have been given out for turn 1, moving in reaction to, and moving under braking. Because you know what F1 doesn't allow is just blocking. You can anticipate. You're not allowed to just flat out block, and that's exactly what Lando did. So, wow, and that wasn't even all of F1. So we got through the rule stuff, but Ferrari, Haas, and Alpine all had surprise performances. Lawson scores points, and Aston Martin's upgrades did not work. So let's go through MotoGP pretty quickly. I'm not going through sprints. I cut out Porsche Carrera Cup. I cut out the DTM finale at Hockenheim because I knew we were going to have a lot to talk about with F1. So we're just going to jump into these MotoGP results. DNFs, Lucas Avadori and Joao Mir. 19th is Bezecchi, 18th Nakagami, 17th is Augusto Fernandez, 16th is Alicia Spargaro, 15th Alex Marquez, 14th Luca Marini, 13th Alex Rins, 12th Johan Zarco, 11th Jack Miller, 10th Raul Fernandez, 9th Fabio Quartararo, 8th is Maverick Vinales, 7th Brad Binder, 6th Franco Morbidelli, 5th is Enea Bastianini, 4th is Fabio Di Gianantonio, who wasn't supposed to race, 3rd, Pecco Bagnaia. 2nd, Jorge Martin. And in 1st place, winning his 3rd Grand Prix of the season, is Marc Marquez. This makes the championship standings at the top between Martin and Pecco a 20-point gap. So he actually stretched out the gap a little bit over Pecco. And let's just say this. This race was easily one of Marc Marquez's most impressive races he's ever done. He, on an older bike, pushing just as hard, overtook Jorge Martin, who's the championship favorite and has the newest, fastest bike. And he did it in style. Martin re-overtook. Marquez dive bombs up the inside. This is another conversation question for the people watching, whether you're watching this live on X or on playback on YouTube and Rumble. Are we cooked? Are we cooked for when Marquez is on the factory Ducati bike and the entire field has to race against Marquez on the best bike? But on the flip side, will this expose Pecco Bagnaia and Jorge Martin for just being the best on the best bike? Right? If you put either of them on the older bike, do we think either of them are winning? No. I think either of them on the older bike don't beat Bastianini or Bezecchi. So, yeah, I think Marquez, I'm just calling it now. What's the date? October 21st. I think Marc Marquez walks with the championship next year. I don't think it's anywhere close. So, Di Gianantonio, DG as they call him, got his 4th place, and he had the fastest lap of the race, which was super impressive for him, especially coming off of an operation. Let's move into NASCAR. So we had NASCAR at Las Vegas. This race was setting up for the Championship 4, if any of the playoff drivers won the race. So let's just do a top 10. Because obviously the field is much bigger. Chris Buescher in 10th, John Hunter Nemechek at 9th, Denny Hamlin 8th, Ross Chastain 7th, Martin Truex 6th, Alex Bowman 5th, William Byron 4th, Daniel Suarez 3rd, Christopher Bell 2nd, and Joey Logano in 1st. With this, Joey Logano claims his spot in the Championship 4 when a week ago he wasn't even in the playoffs, and then due to a disqualification by Alex Bowman, he's in. On top of that, he was 15th in the regular season. So we got to talk about these NASCAR championships. I've said before, get rid of the playoffs. The whole point of the championship is to reflect who is the best on average over a season. Winning you're in does not do that. That simple. There's no way a 15th place driver, when 14 drivers were better over a 30-plus race season, there is no realm in which he should be in the championship war. I don't care how many... Okay, two-time champion. Dozens and dozens of races. I do not care. The same way that I'd say Kyle Busch doesn't deserve to be in the playoffs, which he's not. But he had a horrible season. If you look at the 14 drivers ahead of Logano, I would say each one of them either deserve the championship more or were an underdog that is more deserving of a chance even than Logano, like Suarez. Guys, for comparison, for our F1 viewers that are actively typing after my rant and you're typing out a paragraph, ready to let me know how you differ when it comes to opinions on this. This would be like going through an entire F1 season and then Kevin Magnussen being guaranteed a spot in the Final Four championship against like Max, Norris, and Leclerc, and then Magnussen. Would anyone say Magnussen's more deserving than Sainz? Or more deserving than Lewis or George or Sergio? No. But NASCAR, this is how NASCAR does it. Fortunately, I am not the only one with that opinion. Everyone online is upset about this. So hopefully that'll lead to some change. But we'll see. NASCAR is really stubborn, and the system has been the way it's been for close to a decade. Or just over a decade. So looking at what's coming up next as we wrap up the longest episode to date, we have World Endurance Championship in Bahrain this month. We have next weekend Mexico for Formula One. We have NASCAR at Homestead, Miami. And I'm sure we're going to have some more that I didn't even get to covering. But I can now go make another cup of coffee and relax. Guys, if you're watching this on X, I seriously appreciate you coming out, watching this live stream. Even if you're watching this on playback on X, thank you so much. Please, if you're watching this anywhere, follow on X. A lot of this news, guys, we're retweeting as it's happening. So if you want to stay up to date on several disciplines of motorsport, like the fact that WRC is coming to a last rally championship showdown in and amongst all the MotoGP, F1, V8, Supercars, IMSA, WEC news, make sure to follow on X. And then obviously subscribe on YouTube, follow on Rumble, like the video, and comment on any of these discussion topics we had. Thank you so much for the support, for the subscriptions. I will see you all next week for episode 9 of the Drivers Debrief. I'll see you next time.